leading black African city is now going to be contested by a 74-year-old granny.
China is doing what the US used to do. It's granting visa to these smart guys.
Very welcome to this edition of the Bad Natives podcast. I'm Ferial Hafaji in Johannesburg.
I am Charles Onyango Obo in Nairobi, a city that is full of bad natives.
And I am the bad native from Kampala, Robert Kaushinga. Right here, it's sunny, it's warm, and also to remind you to follow, subscribe, and like what we do. And even if you don't like, we are here anyway. So let's go.
So we've all just been watching, I guess, aghast at Donald Trump's performance at the UN General Assembly. It would have been our last night. Tell me, Robert, as you're watching, what were your thoughts? I mean, the house there was absolutely silent. The last time he spoke, they had laughed. This time, I think there was shock and silence.
I mean, I think everybody was thinking the way I was thinking, that the guy is just a a banana republic leader. I mean, that's the show. It it's it reminded me of Idi Amin in 1976. I don't know if Charles remembers that footage. Yeah, and somebody, I hope our producer can pick it up. I mean, everyone in the audience when Amin stood up and decided he wanted to speak in Luganda, our local language. There were no translators. There was nobody. The guy was completely incomprehensible. And everybody just thought, this can't be happening. So that is really up there with Idi Amin in terms of the performance that we saw. And, I think the apologists are really running out of explanations for that kind of behavior. So I don't know. This is a guy who felt so bad that he wasn't in Beijing, where the people were being given a military parade and being paraded as world powers. So then the one opportunity he had to really stand out as the leader he wants to be accepted, he blew it. So for me, it's just the most disturbing thing is to see the decline in terms of leadership standards. A bit like what happened in South Africa when South Africa moved from Mandela to Mbeki, and then suddenly, just went off the cliff with JZ. So I think that the next thing we're going to see is Trump singing Umshini Wami on stage. Well,
It was really interesting. Did you see that his opening gambit was about the decline of the UN and how dysfunctional it is? And he used the fact that he and the First Lady had gotten stuck on the escalator and that the teleprompter wasn't working. It now turns out in a statement from the UNSG's office that American security had actually been deployed to run the escalators and the teleprompter because they don't trust UN staff, and they had hashed it. So it just gets worse and worse. The
so
satire
the dysfunction is from his
is
team.
his teams who had insisted on running the escalator and running the teleprompter, and they didn't know how to do it. So it really is like Banana Republic stuff.
I mean, Charles, I don't know
Yeah.
what you think.
And then he complains about all of these fictional wars that he has ended, and the doesn't thank him. The only thing they do is, like you said, uh, put him on an escalator that doesn't work and the prompt. But the absence of the sense of occasion was shocking because this is the 80th anniversary of the UN.
Huge.
Yeah,
Yes.
and really the modern UN is a creature of the US. So you'd have expected that this is someone who would wrap himself around that history and claim
Mhm.
that this is a global, this is a great institution, and this is America's what in America bequeathed the post World War II order, and uh,
Mhm.
and he didn't. But you also the before he came, he had had that very crazy press conference in which he channeled lots of conspiracy theories about vaccine, about autism, and all this. So really, like you say, you know the the deadline is simply frightening, and it's
Mhm.
something that a country, you know, the the US has had leaders previously uh,
Mhm.
who were not well, who were all sorts of things. But at that time, they were very, very good at hiding it. But modern day America can't even manage that, which is
But
No.
but Charles,
yeah,
the most unwell leader of the U.S. was also the most consequential. Is Roosevelt,
Yes.
FDR. So so I think the question of health is not an issue for me. I actually think that you are looking at a person whose faculties have declined significantly from the time he was last in office, and that all of these pressures of being president are now beginning to tell, and it's playing out on the world stage, which for me raises a big question about the sheer age of all these world leaders, and in our case in Africa, whether actually they are not, their age is not responsible for the retrogression that we are experiencing. Because I chanced on an interview by the president of Finland, which was conducted by Bloomberg. I was amazed. First of all, this guy does Ironman cycles, long distances for, and he is fit. This guy is fit. He is young. He is vibrant. I actually think, Charles, that although we're looking to China and everywhere else, I think the one place that's going to emerge out of this global mess is Europe. Europe and Canada are actually going to emerge because they have leaders whose vitality is still really, really up there. First of all, they have intellectual depth because they are very well trained and very well read. I mean, what's his name? Mark Carney has two
yeah.
PhDs or something like
Yes.
that. And he is very physically fit. He still does 21K marathon and half marathons. The guy from Finland is positioning himself because he says, look, we have a 1,300 mile or kilometer border with Russia. I can't afford a problem. So, and I didn't know the details about their military. I didn't know that they have more artillery than the Germans. And yes, and have 280,000 guys on standby. They have an army, a standing army of 280,000 men. So I think we need to examine the question of vitality. Looking at Trump's display, I think his age is caught up with him. This guy is going to be 80 very soon, like very shortly. So what does that say about his? Does he even understand where he is? So I guess for me, I think the question of longevity is beginning to tell. Yes, you can live as long as you want to live. Should you be in public office?
Hmm. So let's then move to Malawi, where counting I see is still underway, but it
Mhm.
does seem like Mutharika is going to be the winning candidate. 85 years old, Charles. Have you been watching that one?
Yes. Robert is going to go in a fit over this one.
I mean, completely upending our story of the anti incumbency for young leaders emerging across Southern Africa, younger leaders at least.
But you see the and I don't know Peter Mutharika's victory, which is I think he's in recent times. He's only the second guy to do a Trump, and I think
Mhm.
also in Somalia, I think Mahmoud also lost and came back.
Uh-uh, Charles, I disagree.
Eh,
It's his brother who was president.
were in
So
Somalia. Oh,
no, no, no.
yes, 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 yes. You're right. It is his brother who was
Mutalika's brother.
yeah,
And
Ah.
there's a
bingo,
story
bingo,
there as well.
bingo.
Yeah.
But you see the thing, the thing about that is he
Mm.
hardly campaigned.
Yes.
He was, on some days he didn't put in a campaign at all, or, worth speaking of. So it just tells you how bad Lazarus Chakwera was.
Hmm.
Yeah, honestly, and not only how bad it was, but honestly, I thought when Chakwera was elected, I said, this is it. Eh? This is it, because he ticked all the right boxes. Very enlightened person. He had worked around Africa. He's, was saying all the right things and pressing all the right
And,
buttons. And then
and
he
he spoke,
failed spectacularly.
Charles, and he spoke with a North Carolina accent.
Did he?
Yeah.
So,
But Charles, for me, yeah, sorry, go on, man.
just go on.
Now I'm saying, for me, that story brings to the fore three things. One is that we may say all we want to say. There is an underlying grievance within the African political I mean, outside the voters, the people have a grievance and they will express it. So whether it's the protests in Mozambique, whether it's the change of leadership in Botswana, or it's the change of leadership in now in Malawi, the resistance that you see in Tanzania to CCM, the Gen Z in Kenya, the ghetto guys in Uganda, everywhere there are ways in which grievance is being expressed. It may not necessarily translate into a change of government, but it is expressing itself as a grievance that you are not serving us. It doesn't matter who you are. And so you then have the second point, Charles, which you are inferior, is that how can a guy who can't even physically campaign, physically, he can't bring himself to ask you for your vote, what is he going to do for you? We must ask that question. And of course, the third point for me out of that is, why does it take so long for the count to be done in this age and time? And really, for me, what it says is that in a world which has ambitions of the kind that people are doing, you see people investing in technologies, people are moving at a supersonic speed into the future. We are sitting here with guys who are essentially great grandparents. Not even, I mean, our own president, his daughter is going to get married soon. His granddaughter, sorry, is getting married soon. So in his next term, he will be a great grandfather. Is he really the right person to lead us to where we are going, or to
Maybe
lead the people?
Maybe that's why they should be good on good terms with Elon Musk. Inserts that little thing in their brain and revives them. But Pharaoh, you are from South Africa. I mean, you keep an eye on the Africa picture, the South African picture. What is the view in Southern Africa or South Africa? Because Southern Africa has got this strange thing. You
Mm,
have a group of a Botswana is possible.
mm,
If even a Zambia, I mean, you can do, and then you have the other extreme. You have the Angolas, you have the Zimbabwe's, and as a member of
mm,
SADC, you have CCM, which has become
mm,
so
Hmm.
repressive. President Suluhu has basically jailed everyone. In
mhm,
I think the last major candidate was knocked out a week ago. So What is the
Charles,
reading? What
Charles,
is your reading?
Charles, sorry,
Yeah.
Charles. I just want to add for Furio that
Yes.
In Uganda, they've played the opposition politicians. So they've prevented two potential rivals who really could move the needle a little bit. They've prevented them from being nominated. And then they moved the date of nominations forward.
Hmm.
So not only were these guys prevented from being nominated, the date was moved forward so they can't do anything to save themselves. So
You
there
see,
you
there's
go
no
now.
skullduggery like that. So, Charles, in answer to your question, what I've come to realize, I think it's an inheritance of liberation movement politics, perhaps, merged with tradition. So, in South Africa, the ANC has always had this thing that young leaders can't put up their hands; they have to wait their turn, and it's come back to bite them now because Paul Mashatile, who's the possibly the person who will take over from Ramaphosa at the next party election, he's 64 years old and he's regarded as a young Turk. Now,
Wait.
on the other hand, you have in the opposition parties really fabulous young people. So I've drawn up a list of about 15 young MPs under 45 years old, and almost none of them are from the governing ANC, from the largest party, the ANC, which taught me something about liberation movements and this idea that you must wait your turn and a veneration of age, which I do venerate age, but I'm not sure whether in public life you want to continue that tradition. So that's just been my understanding. Bob, your deep knowledge of liberation movements, does that resonate, or do you think it's only a South African thing?
No, it cuts across. It cuts across. And there was something, you see, and I'm guilty of it, in admiration of what the liberation movements were able to achieve with very limited resources, we missed certain autocratic and monarchical tendencies.
Mm-hmm.
And we peppered over the weaknesses of the individual leaders because they were so charismatic. They had made such a huge sacrifice on behalf of liberation because the oppression was just too much. So we missed the humanness of their and the human frailties that they have. Because a good example is Robert Mugabe. I mean, Robert Mugabe was perhaps the best guy. But we missed certain realities because all of that stuff was covered up. You know, he'd overthrown the white establishment. But we didn't see those things. So now the reality of all of these liberation movements is beginning to hit us. That they were not just autocratic, but they had monarchical tendencies. Some succeeded, some didn't. I mean, in Angola, Dos Santos thought he could hand it over to his daughter, and he failed. So, and now you have a party in ideological crisis in Angola. Then you've got the problems in Mozambique. You've got the issues of Tanzania. You've got a crisis of renewal in Uganda. Because when you look at the Uganda liberation movement, the guys who are part of the liberation tradition in Uganda cannot recognize what has become of their party. And somebody once, Charles, told me about the best example of the liberation movement. And Furio, this was very interesting. The origin of liberation politics is actually Amilcar Cabral of
Mm.
Guinea-Bissau and Cape Verde. And I remember this was over 10 years ago, and the guy told me that the problems of that party, of Amilcar Cabral's party, would come to haunt us. I said, why? He said there was always a contestation between the thuggish wing and
Mm.
the intellectual wing. The problem was always that the intellectual wing didn't have the means of violence. It is only the thugs who were willing to do the violence. And because they were willing to do that, they could brush aside the intellectuals. Now, in the case of Amilcar Cabral's party, The thugs took over in Guinea-Bissau. The intellectuals decamped to Cape Verde, and the
Lost
two
out.
countries and the two countries separated.
Mm.
Now, that you can't have in this liberation tradition. Now, unfortunately, if I was an ideologue for ANC, what you have just said means that ANC is going to collapse because it has
It
no
is.
mechanism. It has no mechanism of
Yes.
renewal. And it
Mm.
used to do its alliance with SSCP and with the trade unions is where it got its renewal of leadership. But this waiting your turn or this praising longevity and finding arguments to justify longevity so the leader can't go, or having a group as the case is in Tanzania where elders come and decide who should be, that
Yes.
that method is not going to work anymore. And I think,
No. So I share one small story. I don't know if you noticed it in a big news week, but do you all know Helen Ziller, the
yeah,
head
yeah,
of the Democratic Alliance? So
yeah.
she is like a former Cape Town mayor, a world mayor of the year, former premier of the Western Cape. Last weekend I went to Soweto, where she was announced as the mayoral candidate for Johannesburg, for her
Whoa.
party, right? 74 years old. And I mean, the city, in the main, the response to her has been yes, come, because Johannesburg has reached such a state of dysfunction. This like leading black African city is now going to be contested by a 74-year-old granny with a very good reputation of turning around the Western Cape and Cape Town. So, how's that for a counterfactual to what would be expected here?
No, but Friro, the now that you mentioned that, I was reading this, the comments that President Ramaphosa made to a speech to the party,
Yes.
and it was really stunning because he said if that the ANC should learn from the DA. I
Mhm.
mean,
Oh,
this
he's in
this this
such trouble for saying that.
yeah,
So much trouble.
and that the NSA should learn from the DA, and it's not just for these things you're saying it's a younger party and all that, but it is still seen as white party,
Mhm.
but it goes to a point which Robert there likes to Robert there likes to talk of the triumph of white South Africa. He says they are much more competent, and that South Africa may have a future where the,
You
the white leaders will, and then I'll give you an example. I mean, it's a very uncomfortable one, but let me say it. I have one of my relatives was a diplomat for an international organization in South
Hmm.
Africa for a very long time. And when he was going home, he would drive past a football stadium, and further on down, he would drive past a rugby stadium.
Yeah.
And and I remember him saying, after the weekend match, the the football stadium, which was basically our sport, the black majority, it would be so littered with rubbish, bottles, and all of these things. But the white stadium, which was patronized by a larger white, community, it would be sporting clean, and sometimes you would see middle-aged white women on Monday morning picking up the remaining scraps. So by the time you are coming home, if I at night time of the evening, the whole atmosphere around the rugby stadium is sparkling and and earthy,
At the football stadium?
the
ah,
this the plastic paper is still flying in the wind, and the
I think
straws
you're
are.
reading, no. I can't buy that theory. I think you're reading too much Rassi and Anton Rupert behind you, Kabashenga.
by the way, Furio, we're talking to you as guys who are part of the ANC exile. I worked in the ANC office here in Kampala. So
Yes, you were.
but But I want to go back to where we started and just sort of paint the picture again. I mean, Charles, I was telling you about that Mutarika. When his brother died, that Mutarika was the foreign minister in Malawi. So he tried to grab power because at that time Joyce Banda was the vice president.
Hmm.
So he put the dead body of his brother in an aeroplane and flew it to South Africa to pretend that the guy had gone
Mm.
for treatment. Then he tried to fix the takeover but I think the military uh, then intervened and stopped him from doing that. And so Joyce Banda became president. But there were some international forces that sort of talked to the military and told them, advised them on how to manage this issue. Now, let's look at it this way, Charles, and let's paint a picture. Furio, okay? The candidate for the election in Cameroon is 92. The president of Nigeria is 85. He's going to stand again. Uh, the one of Uganda who is standing again stand 82. The one of Malawi is now 85. The one of uh, Eritrea is going to be, I think, 70 something. The one of Egypt now, if we follow that reasoning, then the problem is that we have aging leaders who can't be trusted with seeing the future because of just the limitations, physical limitations, who are going to dominate the way the continent is interacts with the rest of the world. But Charles, and I put this to you, but we also have some disappointing young leaders like Chisekedi. I mean, you were telling us in the break, what is a young man?
No, actually,
Please talk.
So,
so there is Chisekedi, and then there is Fiber, Basiru in Senegal. And let us start with Senegal and come to Chisekedi, because what has Faye done? He recently, this was the anti-corruption guy, austere, very radical, anti-imperialist, and all this.
Yeah.
So and so first, they are repressing the media more than Macky Sall ever did.
yes.
Yeah.
And two, recently they passed a law, an anti-corruption law,
Mm.
um, and they the law specifically
Mm.
excludes the president from
Wow.
from scrutiny, and he signed this. He accepted to this bill. So all the standards, the disclosure of wealth and all of that, everyone else can do it, but not the president. And this is the youngest, I think.
He
Who's
is.
younger, him or Boko in Botswana? I think he's younger.
He's
Yeah,
younger.
yeah,
He's the youngest.
yes,
He is much younger than all of them because Boku is 45 or 46. The guy Traore of Burkina Faso is probably also in his late 40s. So I think this guy is, yeah.
yeah. So, or and then you come to the DRC Congo. Right now, there is a bit of upheaval. President Felix Tshisekedi has been carrying out a purge, and so a lot of his
Mhm.
lieutenants have. He has unleashed the judiciary upon them. He has, kicked them out. So right now, previously his strongest ally was the Speaker of Parliament.
Mhm.
So now he's making moves to 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 get rid of him, and he is replacing him with one of his henchmen in Parliament, who is 95 years old.
Wow.
Yeah. So it is
So you
maybe
really,
maybe it's a good time to be 80 something or 90 in African politics,
wow.
or,
So
or
it's a
global
very
politics.
interesting. You make a very interesting trend here, gents, because there was the longest time where we were welcoming a new generation of leaders, but that has shifted completely just as we enter the AI age. And
Yeah.
I just wanted to get from both of you, like, how much are you using AI tools in your working and other lives so far?
So for me, very interestingly, so just to seg this conversation to from where
Yes.
we were to where we are today, I actually think although we have those types of leaders, even the young ones we've described, like the crazy guy in Guinea Conakry, Mamadou somebody, I
Mm,
mean, we've got those ones, right? And I told you last week about this guy from who's taken takeover in Benin. But let us think about what people like Abiy Ahmed of Ethiopia, the ambition that his youth is bringing, if you may call it that, to where Ethiopia can be. And I think Ethiopia is
mm,
currently experiencing such how do you put it, such resurgence of patriotism and nationalism that they could actually drive off that and do some GDP. But then you also look at countries like Rwanda, which have very young people who are looking at this. The minister for ICT in Rwanda is a PhD in AI.
wow.
So we have people who are thinking along those, whose public leaders are thinking along those lines. Now, why is this important? And I'm going to give my own example. So yesterday, I had a group of about 10 very young coders come to my farm because they've been asking to give me a solution. So they want to build for me a farm management integrated system. The problem I've always had is that a lot of the young guys who come to me with their tech solutions, they are asking me, they want to offer me a solution they have invented. So
Mm,
they've defined what my problem is and they've come to me with the solution. And I keep telling them, my problem is not how to go to the market. I know where the market is and I know how to get there. The
mm,
problem is that what I am taking to the market may either be too costly or whatever. So that journey before I am ready to go to the market is where I need help. So finally, I got these kids and they said, but we can't innovate for you. We can't create a system unless we come to the farm and see what it looks like. And I was amazed at just how the simple functions at the farm that we're thinking about, how do we keep track of our agronomy, the things we're doing
mm,
with the trees, and how they wanted to map the boundaries and to know, so how do we deal with the trees in one area, how are we dealing with pests and diseases, how do we manage the harvest, how does the harvest become a product of coffee, how do we handle that, and then how do we go from there to keeping the records. They wanted to look at the written records and how to convert that. And then how do we keep in touch with the world? In other words, what is going to be our platform for communicating with the world? And how can we integrate in that platform analytical tools that can do a business report for me by just keying in and saying, what does the information and the data we have now, what can it project? How can Firio, who is sitting in Johannesburg, get into our website and get projections of what our yield will be, and based on world prices, know at what price she can buy from us? Guess what? All of that
what?
is going to be AI based.
Sure. So
And
that must have been a beautiful morning for me. That's where leadership lies.
Yeah,
That's the future I see. Huh?
and I
All
was
absolutely,
leaders will be irrelevant.
no,
Now,
what I
absolutely.
was
you.
Charles, yeah,
Yeah, and if you just look at, you, Fiona, and I are in the same business. I think we spend a lot of time writing every week. But
yeah,
like one time, some years I wanted to to find how many islands are. do the East African countries have? The coastal
Mm.
countries, Tanzania and Kenya, and how many islands are in the inland lakes, Lake Victoria and all those, and how many of those belong to which country? I remember I worked on this for just basically using Google for about a week,
Yeah.
Mm.
and uh, and then I packed it, and then there was the Chat GPT explosion. So after some time, I returned to this. So I had my notes, and I basically pasted them as a prompt in Chat GPT, and I got the result in less than a minute. So what has happened? And then I just said, and I just sat there, said, this thing, it is over because just even at that level, just it is simply how it has just improved productivity. The things that used to take me 7 hours, 2 days, I do them in a minute or two now. It's just incredible. And if you look at this at the level of scale, so we are seeing in sports, for example, that all these improvements that we are seeing in African sports in areas where we never used to be very competitive, that is AI working for you. You are seeing now delivery systems. I think Rwanda, they are talking of starting a whole new drone. Because they had zipline that was just delivering medical supplies.
Yeah.
But now they're just thinking of going to a national system of drone deliveries of other products. So these technologies for people who can harness it at both our individual level and at state level, they are just gonna see dramatic changes in productivity.
But
You've
Firio,
you're definitely seeing it here already. Hey,
Mm.
Bob.
I wanted to marry the two conversations. The one about our politics and the quality of the political leadership that's arriving to be responsible for Africa's political direction, and this question of AI. So I think that we in the media need to redefine the agenda of public debate. What do I mean? It's so important that we stop that public officials stop talking generally about how ICT is a major enabler of development. These
Yeah, yeah.
grand speeches that don't mean anything. So I've said this before on the podcast, so I'll repeat it today. One of the discussions we should be having right now is what public investment needs to be made in order for AI to have the effect that we want it to have on the African continent. Now, this is where, whether we want it or not, we must address the question of governance. That public investment and public procurement cannot be subjected to the short term interests of public officials who want to make a quick buck of a procurement. Tenderpreneurs need to be executed. Why? Yeah, because this
I'm
is,
with you.
so listen, Firio, you cannot leapfrog South Africa into the age of AI with the power deficit that South Africa has.
No, actually you can. And here's my
How?
theory is
Yeah.
if we wait for the public sector to take us into this age, we will wait forever. And that in fact what you're seeing is the private sector is already using the tools available to get us there. And it's going to be your academies, it's going to be your entrepreneurs, It's going to be
No, but
partnerships
but
with Google,
no,
for
but Sirio,
example,
no,
in the
but Sirio,
creative
no,
economies,
no,
because
but
we
Sirio,
cannot wait. We
no, no,
cannot wait for the
Sirio,
public sector.
Sirio. One, I agree we cannot wait, but most importantly, we will not wait. Why won't we wait? Because we're already moving. The point I was,
Already, look at your farm, your story of your farm. We're not going to wait for
but
policy and
yeah,
whatever to happen.
but
My
but
cousins are running coding academies. They're just going to do the stuff, and I think
no,
that's what keeps us moving.
Sirio, I agree that at that level there will be movement. But we must force the conversation about the public investments that need to be made because
Of course.
everyone is telling us, everybody involved in tech is saying you need a certain energy level. Without that level of energy,
Mm.
you can't do the AI. Now, the mistake, one point people are missing in the debate between China and the US, and why the people know that China is going to win the war on AI is not because China has so many entrepreneurs in the AI thing or they have all of this mad obsession with
Yeah.
gadgets. No, it's because China made the necessary investments in energy years ago. So they have an energy surplus that will allow them to do the innovations that they need in the AI, which the US didn't do. So the
No,
question,
and the US has also just slapped HB 100 visa holders with the 100,000 US dollar application fee, which really is going to make it China and India's win. Charles, you want to come in on this? It was you who chose the topic.
Yeah, but and in fact, very interestingly, for the first time, uh, China is doing what the US used to do. It's granting visa to these smart guys, which is and and if, as Robert says, I was looking at some of the data. I think China, I think last year added more power than I think the whole world combined.
Yes.
I mean, it's just madness, but it also touches on the thing that you and Bob, uh, touched on, because the whereas you need a lot of power, right, a lot of power to run these data centers and all these kind of things. What we are seeing is a model from China, which and the whole question of DeepSeek, uh, you know, uh, it tells us that there is actually a different path. And if you are very clever, there is actually a path to succeed which is not so heavily dependent on energy. So, whereas energy is important, that really a little bit of ingenuity, can also get us there. And Africans tend to be very good at those kind of solutions which don't require a lot of energy because we don't have it.
Hmm.
yesterday as
Bob,
those kids, were walking around, one of the problems I had is that the main grid for electricity was off, so I was on my solar system.
oh,
No, but yesterday I seriously thought about what if I set up my own solar farm and go
I think
buying
that's a terrific idea.
I
You
go
have to.
buying panels one by one eventually and put them somewhere because there is a particular place where the sun shines longest. And then I start selling power to the villagers because you see,
Yes.
I-
So microgrids, that's
Yeah.
going to be our future.
yeah,
I
because
love it.
I will need that
I've loved
energy.
the conversation. Parting shots.
Mine first. It has
Yes,
to come from Tokyo. Ah,
has to.
the women, these African women just swept the medals. They were completely unforgiving. And I think, Charles, I think it was Chebet who came from behind and just like kept eating away at the and just
Odira in the 800
got,
meters.
yes. I was like, what do these people eat on a daily basis? I mean, it was just a joy to watch them go the way they did. And then the 400 relay team from Botswana, those guys,
That's my
and
parting shot too. They were
go ahead, take it.
beautiful.
No, but yours
Thank
should
you.
be Van Niekerk. How did you?
And then Wade van Niekerk's comeback was certainly my
All
parting
right.
shot of the week. Beautiful to see an upbeat moment from Tokyo, and then you take us out, Charles.
Well, I mean, I have two things I thought about. You saw what happened yesterday to Emmanuel Macron on the street in New
Yes,
York. He
By the way,
was,
one of our friends, Charles, met him and greeted him and said, "How
yeah.
are you?"
So these guys walk. Kenya president, everyone walks when they get there. But at the same time, there was an article on Deutsche Welle which was talking about uh, corruption and how it affects pension systems, and it cited a report which I had actually missed, which came out last year in Kenya and by the Auditor General of Kenya. And the Auditor General revealed at that point, and this I can't bring my head around, that there were 260,000 cases of pension fraud
What?
that that he had found in Kenya, worth to 67 billion shilling. 260,000 cases of pension fraud. It's just
While you're
it's
at it, Charles,
staggering.
while you're at it, Furio, allow me to depress Charles a bit more.
Please,
The Ugandan public servants are working on a law to extend the retirement age from public service from 60 to 70.
no. Well, that ends our podcast this week on Hanging On for Life. Please do like, subscribe, and share. Over and out.
okay. Thank you, and nice to see you again, Pharaoh.
Thank you, guys. Good to
Yeah.
see you
Guys,
guys.
bye.
Okay. Bye.
Yeah.